about 9/11 the evening after the attack, when he told the nation in a speech, "Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans." Of course, we just watched what Bush did. Bush did not say one word. He did not ask Hart any questions. He didn't give any orders. He did not know who or which country was attacking, whether there would be more attacks, what military plans had been taken, what military action should be taken. Indeed, he knew virtually nothing about what was going on outside the room. He just sat there. According to loyal Bush biographer Bill Salmon in his book Fighting Back: The War on Terrorism from Inside the Bush White House, Bush lingered until the press was gone at about 9:30 a.m., nearly half an hour. Bush has lied on just about every question as to what he was doing when the September 11 attacks were in progress. What does this tell us? If Bush was a participant in 9/11, he'd have to be a complete idiot to have botched his alibi so completely. Well, Bush is an idiot, but even an idiot can't get instructions from a more capable mastermind. So there it is again. Bizarre, seemingly deliberate self-incrimination. But why? Let's look for more pieces to the puzzle before we put it together. If you have researched 9/11, you probably have heard the name Larry Silverstein. He famously told PBS that with regard to WTC-7 on 9/11,
they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
It's a remarkable thing to say. The fire department pulled out of Building 7 at 11:30 on the morning of 9/11. But Silverstein did not get to watch the collapse until about 6 hours later. And it's not very often you hear someone refer to a team of firefighters as it instead of them. And why was the fire department consulting the building's leaseholder for advice? That isn't normal. Let's examine what happened to WTC-7 for a minute. Building 7's collapse was what many people call the smoking gun. It is the single most conclusive piece of evidence that 9/11 was an inside job. It looked exactly like a controlled demolition in every sense. Demolition charges were visibly going off. The symmetry and speed of the collapse was astounding, and the structural damage to the building from debris that fell from the Twin Towers was totally inconsistent with the collapse that we saw. Why would the perpetrators of 9/11 have done something so incriminating? It seems likely that something in their plan went wrong with Building 7. Maybe Flight 93 was supposed to have hit it. Maybe it was supposed to have come down just as the Twin Towers were falling on it, but the demolition had some technical problem. We don't know anything for sure, but it seems like the perpetrators of 9/11 did something very wrong when they demolished Building 7. Why would they leave behind a smoking gun if they could help it? And if it was supposed to come down earlier, why did they demolish it later at all? Maybe there was too much incriminating evidence in Building 7 that it had to be destroyed. At any rate, it was destroyed. And in a shocking development, it became exposed that the BBC and CNN both reported the collapse of Building 7 some 15 minutes before it happened.
We've got some news just coming in, actually, that the Salomon Brothers building in New York, right in the heart of Manhattan, has also collapsed. One assumes that the building would have been virtually deserted. Whether this latest collapse is going to influence the president, who we heard about a few moments ago, was expected to be heading from Nebraska back to Washington? We don't know. The 47-story Salomon Brothers building, situated very close to the World Trade Center, has also just collapsed. Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks.
As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city.
It's now, what, some 8 hours since the attacks. Is there any estimate yet available of the number of casualties in the World Trade Center?
When you talk to people they daren't even say how many people might have been killed and injured, and I think that feeling, until the idea of the devastation, people don't really know what to say or what to think. I think they feel the bubble of their security as being in America has definitely been popped. This city and this country will not be the same, but they don't really know where to turn. That's the very sad thing. I think there's going to be a lot of very, very traumatized people that has hit them very, very hard.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were completely flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley.
And the BBC wasn't the only news channel to prematurely report the collapse. CNN's Aaron Brown did the exact same thing. He reported the collapse even as the building stood there behind him.
On fire and has either collapsed or is collapsing, and you, to be honest, can see these pictures a little bit more clearly than I, but building number 7, one of the buildings...
How could the building's collapse have been reported before it happened? Supposedly, people in the area were already assuming the building would collapse due to the site of the burning building. But nobody could have been certain that the building would collapse. It was the first steel-framed building to ever collapse apart from the Twin Towers. Whoever filed the report of the collapse must have known that collapse was imminent. After all, who would possibly go to the newswire with a report that the building had collapsed before it did? To answer who, ask why. Why would anyone report the collapse before it happened? The BBC's denial of their involvement in the 9/11 cover-up did nothing to explain this. It was just brushed off as some sort of innocent mistake. But there's no way it was an innocent mistake. Building 7 did not take a half hour to fall down. It came down in less than 9 seconds. At the time that whoever told the BBC that Building 7 had collapsed, the report was utterly false. You can't innocently file a report that is totally false. But if it was not an innocent mistake, why do it? Why raise even more possible questions over an already suspicious collapse? Well, it took over 5 years for people to discover this premature reporting. It might have never been discovered.